Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation Mini. I'm Hyle Russell.
I'm Cameron Reigle.
I'm David Thomas Lynch.
We are three wise men on this episode. We're starting the holiday season, right? We're past Halloween, so it's time.
Hey, what about Thanksgiving?
That Thanksgiving is part of the holiday season. That's like, in America, that is the kickoff of the holiday season. So we are on Thanksgiving season now, David.
You explained to two Americans.
Well, okay, look, I know we have an international audience. In the live stream, we have a weirdo Australian hanging out. So, yeah, I'm trying to keep it global, Cameron, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, so I guess Canadian Thanksgiving was last month, so, okay, you're right.
And yes, and speaking of the globe, David, I see I'm trying to tie it in here. We're going to be discussing on this mini episode, and God help us if we can keep this short. We're going to be discussing Super Mario Odyssey and the canon implications for the Donkey Kong universe. So this has been kind of a running theme during the entire season 5 of the Kongversation thus far. We kicked off the season with the reveal of Super Mario Odyssey and New Donk City. We talked about it quite a bit. A couple weeks later, we did the episode The Merger, where we posited the question, are the Super Mario and Donkey Kong franchises becoming one? Then, of course, at E3, they had the big New Donk City set for the Nintendo wing of the convention center. And, you know, the big question has been, is this going to be Donkey Kong Universe, and how does this affect Donkey Kong canon? We're going to be getting into all of that this episode. We did solicit some calls for this mini. It's something we don't usually do, but we know people wanted to spout off about all of this. And we got quite a few calls, and we are going to try to take as many as we can. And by that, I mean we are going to be taking all of them. So let's start, guys. Let's start with the first call. All right?
Hi. It's Rob Butler. And this time I had a series to present about recent information that's come to light about Super Mario Odyssey. So we've got this new Donk City. Right. And it's been confirmed now that exists on the mushroom world, not on Earth. Our Pauline lives there. I thought she was on Earth because Big Ape City is on Earth. Well, so here's the thing. It's like, you know, so this Metro Kingdom, right? Let me tell you what I think happened. So Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., the events of those games happened in Big Ape City, and what happened was Big Ape City was this human construction project, but it was within DKU territory, and they didn't realize that, and that's why Donkey Kong or Cranky Kong attacked, took Pauline, tried to send a message, trying to got some tussle with Mario, his son got involved. So they realized and then it was a misunderstanding, and they all wanted to make up and, like, throw out the olive branch. So, like, the Kongs got together a bunch of their golden bananas. Because why are there only 201 golden bananas? That's a really weird number. So I think they spent, like, 99 of them to help, like, relocate all the future Big Ape City residents to some empty farmland on the Mushroom World, and it became the Metro Kingdom. Pauline became the mayor, or maybe she didn't run for mayor until later. Maybe like Fordham Spike was the first mayor. I don't know. But yeah, and I think that's why the Kongs and the Marios can be friends now, because like they know it was all a misunderstanding, and you know, New Donk was in their honor, and it was peace bridge. What do you think? Bye.
Thank you for the call, Rob Butler. You sounded a little despondent at first, and I had to really listen closely to what you were saying because you sounded very sullen during most of that call. But I think I got the gist of it. And you were saying that Big Ape City, we're going to be getting into that. You know, if you are lost at home about what Big Ape City is, then fear not. We'll get into that. But you're saying Big Ape City and New Donk City are separate cities. Big Ape City was a human construction project that Cranky Kong, back in Donkey Kong Arcade, attacked, and that was the actual basis for that plot, and then they later rebuilt it as New Donk City in the Mushroom World. Okay, that's a theory. All right, let's hear what the next caller has to say.
Hi, this is a mysterious caller, unnamed. And apparently the weekly topic is the canon of Super Mario Odyssey, sorry. And my thoughts are that it's not really canon because, Mario and Princess Peach and Bowser, they're in their own universe, and then Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong and On Guard and Rambi and stuff, they're in their own universe, their own alternate version of Earth. And it's pretty plain to see the difference, not only stylistically, but because in Donkey Kong Land, you don't see a bunch of mushrooms growing up everywhere. So my question to you is, if it's different versions of Earth, what does that mean canonically? Are we going by Rick and Morty rules or what? All right, thanks.
Thank you for the call, unknown caller. Since you're talking about different Earths, I'm just going to assume you're Jerry O'Connell. So Mr. O'Connell, DK Vine has always supported the theory that there is Earth, and then there is the Mushroom Earth, among a multitude of Earths in the multiverse, but that all of Rare's Donkey Kong games, and indeed the Donkey Kong Arcade trilogy as well as the rest of the Rare shared universe, do take place on Earth. Obviously a fictionalized version of Earth where animals can become anthropomorphic and what have you, but everything takes place on this rare archipelago, while the Mushroom Kingdom and everything else is a parallel world. A lot of that was inspired by the early Western canon of Super Mario Brothers Super Show, the movie, things that were suggested by Nintendo of America up until about 1995 with Yoshi's Island. That's basically what our theory has been. And the question is, does Super Mario Odyssey overrule that? We'll get into that. All right, next call.
Okay, the reason my last call seemed incomplete, you don't have to play it by the way, is because my hypothesis is this about New Donk City and canon and all that. Just as the Mario Brothers came from Brooklyn through a warp pipe, Donkey Kong went through a different warp pipe once the Bros made him feel unwelcome and ended up in Donkey Kong World. The Bros and the Kong might have come from these alternate dimensions in the first place, but I'm recounting the relocation chronologically. Now, DK is on DK Isles with the animal buddies and all, and only uses the warp pipe when he is to join in a cameo game. Now, maybe New Donk City's names came from DK when he talks to the others during breaks in kart racing or other cameo games, and Pauline second-handedly absorbed this lore, hence the rattling misspelling, and labeled the town streets after these animals and enemies. That's my idea. Have a good day.
That's an interesting theory. More on that later. Let's hear what somebody else who is not a cast member of Sliders has to say.
Hey, it's Rob Butler again. I hope I didn't miss the boat on this. I had a addendum to my call about Mario Odyssey and New Donk City. Now, I've played through the world in the game now, and I think my theory still stands. The thing is, they heavily imply that New Donk City is where the DK arcade games take place, but they don't outright say it like they did with Big Ape City, and so they just say that it's Donkey Kong has a deep link with the city's history or something to that effect. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that this was this great exodus from Big Ape City to New Donk City after the whole Donkey Kong fiasco, which they probably call it, and they named all these streets in the family of honor, and you know, it was something that could have turned out to be a tragic Harambe situation. It was handled much better thanks to Mario, and that's what the city celebrates with their festival, which is a rendition of the events that took place in Big Ape City, but is heavily linked to the history and the founding of New Donk City, which you have to add one thing, that it was not built with the money from Golden Bananas, but it was built with the power from power moons. And it's interesting to know that the power moons, and especially those power moon clusters that you get from bosses, look a lot like bananas or banana bunches. Maybe in the mushroom world, this is kind of the equivalent of gold bananas, kind of like the Bizarro World version, if you will. I've never even read any comics with Bizarro World in it. That's just the example that comes to mind at the beginning. Anyway, that's what I think. What do you think? Bye.
Well, Rob Butler, my favorite comic featuring Bizarro World was actually in the mid-90s post-crisis era of Superman, where instead of actually being a different world, Bizarro created Bizarro World in an abandoned factory in Metropolis. I think it was a 3-part story. It's worth checking out. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
A little belated, but I guess that call prompted me to just say, yeah, probably spoilers for New Donk City throughout this episode.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Superman comics.
Yeah, mid-90s Superman comics. Spoilers. He turns electric. So, we will be trying to refrain from spoilers from the rest of Super Mario Odyssey. But, yes, New Donk City will be spoiled quite a bit. But you probably assume that coming into this, right? I would hope so, but yes. Okay. Rob, that's interesting theory. I'm sure it'll be coming up in some form or fashion when we discuss our opinions. Let's hear what hopefully someone else has to say. Might just be Rob Butler. Might just be Jerry O'Connell. I'm hoping for Jonathan Rhys-Davies, but that's a long shot. Here we go.
Hey, Kongversation. First time caller here. I go by GVG92 on the forum, but I've made all of 2 posts, so just call me Andre. I'm sorry that this call is arriving so late. I had to work unexpectedly late today, otherwise the call would have arrived much sooner. But your tweet said to call this weekend with our thoughts on the canon of Super Mario Odyssey, and right now it is still Sunday for 1 more hour, although maybe it is midnight, not in Tennessee time, but by the time zone of filthy East Coast dwellers. So if this call does not make it into the episode, I expect a full refund of my $1 Patreon a month. Thank you very much. And also, I'm just going into this assuming that the hot topic of debate for this episode will be whether or not the apparition of Arcade Donkey Kong that appears during the New Donk City Music Festival qualifies as a true appearance by one of the Kongs, and thus whether or not Mario Odyssey is DKU. So, in the event that everyone's already unanimously agreed, like right off the bat, that, this is just the arcade Donkey Kong, we don't have to cover this, or it's just a hologram or something, put on for the sake of the festivities. And then, screw it, this is my phone call, so I'm going to talk about it anyway. So I will argue that yes, this is in fact a true blue appearance by a DKU character, and here's why. I was exploring Fossil Falls when I noticed that on the surface of the breakable rocks that you can break in T-Rex form, that there are fossils embedded in the sides of them. I noticed that there were fossilized ammonites, for one, but also fossilized versions of the 8-bit enemies that you encounter in the game's 2D sections when you go through one of those 8-bit warp pipes, or whatever the official name for them is. It's important to keep in mind here that even though there's still dinosaurs and things in Fossil Falls, whenever you travel there, it's not like you're traveling back in time to the time of the dinosaurs or anything like that. Super Mario Odyssey is an odyssey across a world, but not through multiple realms or anything like that. And if you look at the flavor text for the Fossil Falls map, it mentions that this is one of the few places where dinosaurs still exist. So, modern day.
Oh, okay. That was the end of the call. He hit the 3-minute mark. But, yeah, thank you, Andre. Arguing for the fact that it might be DKU by virtue of it technically being a Donkey Kong appearance. Another point that's going to come up, I have a feeling, during this episode. Let's hear what the next caller, or call, assuming he might have called back. They usually call back. We'll find out. Let's see. Let's hear what they have to say.
All right, home stretch. So we've known since Nintendo Treehouse mentioned in last E3, Word of God, that Pauline is on friendly terms with all the Kongs now, and so combined with the fact that at least 6 hours seemed to pass between Mario assembling the band for Pauline and the commencement of the festival, I think it is only reasonable to assume that during that off-screen interlude, Pauline called up her dear old friend Cranky Kong to come and take part. Now, bear in mind, I know this is Cranky Kong we're talking about, but the last time we saw him was the Snowbad Invasion, which finally provided him an outlet through which to vent the past 3 decades worth of just pure frustration and bitterness. So I imagine that since those events, he has secretly mellowed out enough that when the person he wronged all those years ago comes to him with this request on behalf of the city that has a street named after him, for goodness sake, he'd be willing to just play nice and take the stage reenactment of his defeat on the chin. Albeit not nice enough to use fake barrels that maybe don't pose any threat to Mario's life, because, come on. So yeah, there's my theory. If the 8-bit warp pipes allow Mario to revert to a past version of himself and the in-game evidence all points to the same being the case for the enemies, then Occam's razor would only dictate that the arcade-era Donkey Kong seen during the festival isn't some sort of elaborate fake, but instead the real deal, making Super Mario Odyssey DKU. I am sorry this wound up being so long-winded. I definitely didn't plan to go into this level of elaborate detail, but hopefully you enjoyed indulging me on this as much as I enjoyed the indulgence. So I am very, very excited to hear your thoughts. Feel free to, of course, respond with any and all possible rebuttals you might have, but I'm right. Bye.
Thank you for the call. And another one in the column of, yes, it's probably Donkey Kong, or in this case, Cranky Kong, recontextualized in his younger body through an 8-bit sprite refragmentation. Okay. Let's take. We got 2 more calls. Let's take them. Let's get through it so we can talk. Okay.
All right. How's it going? So, you've probably already discussed this one, but the city, yeah, the new one, the Metro Kingdom one. Big City from DK94. Big Ape City. Are they the same? Yeah, later.
Oh, yeah. Are they the same? So, 3 different representations of a city where arguably the arcade Donkey Kong game took place. Are they the same? I'll be getting to that in just one moment, but let's hear what our final caller has to say.
Hello, the Divine, it's me, Mario, woohoo! Nah, I'm just fucking with you. It's Lighthouse here. I don't have a Switch, and I have been avoiding spoilers for the game like the plague, but I was wondering, how was the soundtrack? Just in general. Well, that's all I have. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Lighthouse. It's terrifying. I never want to hear Mario calling in again, especially referring to us. It's weird to hear DK Vine coming out of that filthy mouth of his.
I will answer his question though.
Okay, yeah.
It is really, really solid.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. All right, sure. It's solid. I feel like I can't speak to it. You guys both have the game. I don't have a Switch yet. I've just watched videos of New Donk City as if it were the Zapruder film. People are talking about the JFK assassination all over again, so, timely reference. But, yeah, I haven't played it, but I feel like I can at least talk about New Donk City. So, let's preface all of this by saying these are just theories that we have, or, we, the three of us may not even agree, but we're not trying to force our opinions on you. This is just where we're coming from as lifelong Donkey Kong Country fans who are kind of throwing a curveball with this game. So,
I'd say treat this as like this is a creative writing workshop. Like, I wouldn't even say anything we declare on this episode is even, like, definitively the final say from DK Vine, because I feel like the game hasn't even been out a week. This has not had time to sit in.
Yeah, like, I haven't even finished the game yet, so...
I mean, I've still got stuff to do in New Donk City, and I don't want to rush through it just to record a podcast.
Right, so our positions on this might evolve over time. Yes. So don't feel like we are beholden to necessarily anything. My opinions do change over time on continuity matters, but I feel like I can at least come up with a placeholder theory for what New Donk City is. Again, this is just where I'm standing. This is what I see from my vantage point at this moment in time. I've not even played the game. I have just watched extensive walkthroughs of New Donk City. I did play New Donk City at E3, so at the very least, I have technically played some of Super Mario Odyssey. All right. First off, independent of whether it's Donkey Kong universe or not, let's talk, and by that I mean whether we accept it as part of the canon of DK Vine, whether we consider it a spin-off or appearance of the modern Donkey Kong via Donkey Kong Country. Whether or not it's any of that, let's talk about whether New Donk City demolishes Rare's Donkey Kong canon as it stood. So, my opinion, guys, no. It's obvious that a lot of people, most people, 99.9% of all gamers, gaming media, etc., are going to assume, and probably rightfully so, given what the game gives them, that New Donk City is where the original Donkey Kong arcade game took place, with the red girders and the oil drums and what have you. And that's probably, obviously, the developer's intent as well. But we are stewards of Rare's shared universe and Donkey Kong Country-centric continuity. I mean, we are the people who care about this stuff. I don't want to, speak for everybody.
Well, we've been spending the past 18 years saying that Cranky Kong is the arcade Donkey Kong, and so this is another thing that we're going to have to yell at Nintendo fans about.
Yeah, exactly. So, I realize we're the odd men out here, but we do take this stuff seriously, and we probably take it more seriously than most. So we feel like we need to, or at least I feel like, I'm speaking for you guys, but I feel like I need to stress the following. So Donkey Kong 94, the original Game Boy, the first game for the Super Game Boy, that kind of expanded on the original Donkey Kong arcade game, and was kind of designed as a soft reintroduction of Donkey Kong to the public in preparation for Donkey Kong Country later that year. Donkey Kong 94 already retconned that the events of the original arcade game took place in what the game referred to as, quote, Big City. And Big City was also very close to a jungle, which was the second world. Basically, the events of Big City were the events of the original Donkey Kong arcade game, and then it was followed up on a little bit. Donkey Kong took off to the jungle.
Well, World Zero was the original arcade, literally.
Semantics, David, semantics.
And then Big City was World 1. Okay, anyway, immediately following. Anyway, go on.
Yes. Anyway, so Donkey Kong Land came out by Rare a year later in 1995, and they kind of tweaked this a little bit, and they stated that the full name was actually Big Ape City, and it was near DK Island and reachable by Zeppelin. So, okay. Then, Donkey Konga 2 for the GameCube, released by Namco, or developed by Namco, released by Nintendo, further cemented the location of the city near Donkey Kong Island by establishing that there was an offshore island right off the coast from the Congo jungle that had a city on it exclusively. Like it was just a city on an island. And that's where all of the game's menus and some of the backgrounds while you're panning took place. So we've got a city off the coast of Donkey Kong Island. Rare established it's called Big Ape City by building off of what was established in Donkey Kong 94. So this is pretty much like hardcore Donkey Kong continuity. I mean, this is established lore up until this point. So I know Nintendo fans and the general gaming media will say that a game of the magnitude and quality of Super Mario Odyssey overrules what is a mostly forgotten Game Boy side-scroller from more than 20 years ago that only the most hardcore of Donkey Kong Country nerds will remember. And Donkey fucking Konga 2, no offense to Craig Duncan, which nobody even remembers Donkey Konga 2. You know, people remember Donkey Konga, but Donkey Konga 2 is just, besides DK Vine,
it's the reason we didn't get Donkey Konga 3 over in the US.
Yes, yes, it was such a
It's the reason we haven't seen Barnacle Bear since Donkey Kong Country 3.
It was such a flop that, nobody remembers it. I obviously, have increased its standing in our little community just by my inability to ever beat it. But I realized that Super Mario Odyssey, as far as gaming is concerned, is heads and shoulders above both Donkey Kong Land, which gets disparaged unless you're, like, again, a hardcore Donkey Kong fanatic, and Donkey Kong 2, which gets disparaged by everybody. But here's the thing, okay? We are DK Vine. We're not called DK Vine unless Super Mario Pipe says it's okay.
Mario Wiki presents DK Vine.
Yeah, right. So Donkey Kong Land and Donkey Kong 2, they're sacrosanct to us. They are basically books in our holy Bible. So we've got to reconcile this. Super Mario Odyssey is kind of an outlier as far as we're concerned. It's kind of an interloper, and we have to kind of come to terms.
Though I would mention, I think, like, at the top of this discussion, you said, like, something along the lines of, does this, like, completely, essentially write Donkey Kong official canon into a corner? Does it just completely, blatantly override what we've come to accept as being what went on in DK Arcade? And I'd say no, because the way that they handled this in Super Mario Odyssey, there isn't definitive statements with this. Everything you're meant to take away, I think, that this is probably where DK Arcade took place, but there's nothing, like, you don't open the map screen and it says this is where that game in the 80s took place, and here's a screenshot of it.
Yeah.
And here's the copyright date. And that kind of even goes along with what Rare did themselves with Big Ape City. Like, we got I believe the tidbit that it was supposed to be the site of DK Arcade from the manual, and the line was something like, you'll recognize that familiar skyline. Like, it didn't outright say, this is where the arcade game took place.
Right. It said something about like it being Donkey Kong's like favorite stomping ground. You'll remember the familiar skyline, but don't get too something along the lines, not verbatim. Don't get too nostalgic or whatever.
Yeah, actually, I have the manual somewhere around here.
Oh, well, go digging for it, because this is a Kongversation Mini. So just go digging through all of your personal possessions, David, and we'll hopefully pad out this episode so we can just release it as a full length conversation.
But yeah, this is, I think, one of those things that Nintendo knows they will write themselves into a corner if they get definitive about it.
Well, it's worth pointing out, too.
Okay, I got the Donkey Kong Land manual.
That was quick. You keep it at the ready. It's by your bedside. That's creepy.
Well, how else am I going to know the level names?
That's true.
It's not like the game is going to tell me. Anyway, travel by Zeppelin to Donkey Kong's favorite stomping ground, Big City. Oh, wait. Anyway, the sight of that familiar skyline might bring back fond memories, but don't waste your time sightseeing when there are Kremlings around. So, that's a bit more ambiguous than I remember.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's pretty much clear that was Rare's intent. And it's worth pointing out, too, that Retro further muddied the waters with Donkey Kong Country Returns, because there was some clear implications in that game that the arcade Donkey Kong took place in the factory, which we know as Kremkrock Industries, but whatever. They kept it super vague, but a lot of people read into Cranky's dialogue that, oh my god, Donkey Kong Arcade now took place in the factory on Donkey Kong Island. So this isn't even kind of a new problem. This is just a higher profile problem. Because
yeah, I don't think any game, now that we were mentioning this, like, Returns alludes to like 25M in the background of one of the levels, but like none of these games we're talking about have been like, oh, there's all 4 levels of DK Arcade explicitly sitting right there.
Right.
It's mostly just, hey, here's the girders that you remember.
And you can write off a lot of it as, like for example, in Returns, we wrote it off as just a coincidence that there was a similar structure to the classic 25.
More than one.
Just 25M. Was it 75M? I always forget the actual measurements.
I think 25M is the first level. 75M is the third or second if you're going by the NES version.
Okay, yeah, I don't even know. I just know it as the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one, because I'm terrible at math. So don't expect me to remember any numbers. We rewrote that off as it's just a coincidence. And Cranky, actually, when you go to Cranky's shop in that world, he'll have one of his random dialogue lines, something like, "Oh, this place takes me back," or something. So again, you know, it's and that's actually probably the only allusion to Cranky being the original Donkey Kong in Retro's games. So it's just one of those things where, yeah, Nintendo and Nintendo's developers have always kind of been ambiguous about where the arcade game took place. Us being Rare fanboys, first and foremost, we're going to hold up Donkey Kong Land as the definitive statement, and we know because of Donkey Konga 2 that there is this city right off the coast, so it just kind of works to reconcile the two. Now, I say all of that, so there's this city off the coast of Donkey Kong Island, but New Donk City, as seen in Super Mario Odyssey, cannot be this same city, because it's not on an island, and there doesn't seem to be a bigger island near it. In fact, and this is very important for everything that DK Vine holds dear as far as, well, Cameron, your map goes, as far as where we believe the general geography of the Rare archipelago pans out, and in space-time as well, because we consider that to take place on our Earth. DK Island is not on the Super Mario Odyssey globe or map. Nothing in this game tries to shoehorn DK Island or any aspects of the landscapes of Donkey Kong Country onward into the Mushroom World. And we've got references to the Mushroom Kingdom. We've got Delfino Island on there. So,
I mean, granted, there's like an entire hemisphere of that map that I don't think gets seen.
True. But, I mean, it's not like it is seen either. So we're kind of in the clear for now. At this point in time, our notions of the rare archipelago still stand.
It's also worth noting, like, New Donk City itself is not on an island. It's on coastal mainland.
Yes.
West Coast mainland, incidentally, which seemed odd because I just think it's, it's a New York analog. I kind of expected just
right.
East Coast.
Right. But, this is kind of our first good look at the Mushroom World, which is explicitly not, any version of our Earth. So it's kind of a relief because I was worried. I was worried they would put a reference to Donkey Kong Island on there somewhere, and then it would just be a torpedo to the good submarine DK Vine. But no, we are still fully airtight. So here's my theory, guys, all right? And I realize this is going to seem like a madman grasping at straws, because that's what it is.
Isn't that what DK Vine basically is?
That's what DK Vine basically is. There's nothing new. You've just had 18 years to be used to my other bullshit, all right? Give it another 18 years. This will seem perfectly normal, assuming I don't evolve this theory, which I probably will. So, we know Pauline has become friendly with the Kongs. It's basically, like alluded to in this game, but it's also been seen in the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series. Pauline debuted in Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, March of the Minis. So, contrary to what you would expect, her getting kidnapped by Cranky Kong back in the original Donkey Kong arcade game seems to have actually opened up a lifelong fascination for her towards the Kongs and Kong culture. Now, a fan theory that I've really warmed up to over the past couple of years comes from DK Vine community member Michael Julius Peterson, or M-Dog. And he has suggested that Pauline developed an interest in primatology after Donkey Kong Arcade. And in his kind of fan art, he's said she became a sort of Jane Goodall figure towards the Kongs. That's how he would reintroduce her to the proper Donkey Kong series if he ever had the chance. And I don't know if she would actually, ever pursue that career, become a Jane Goodall type, but it's a cool take nonetheless. And it kind of squares away with the character as seen in Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2 onward. And those games also established or suggested she relocated to the Mushroom Kingdom or the Mushroom World. Again, DK Vine kind of goes with the notion that Mario and Luigi were born on the Mushroom World, but as babies, they were then taken to Brooklyn, New York. And so we can have our cake and eat it too. No reference to Super Mario 64 intended. Where, they were born in the Mushroom World. The Yoshi's games took place. They happened as depicted. But, they also grew up with an Italian-American family in Brooklyn, became plumbers. So all of that early Western lore can still kind of stand. And then they went back through a warp pipe on a routine plumbing job, came to the Mushroom Kingdom in the events seen in the original Mario Brothers arcade game leading into Super Mario Brothers. So, anyway, okay. Basically what I'm saying is, what if, guys, New Donk City isn't where the arcade game took place, but it's Mayor Pauline's tribute to Big Ape City and Donkey Kong Island? Nah?
I do think that's, again, this is a work in progress, but I think
yes.
For the moment, this is like the cleanest explanation to me. Prior to this episode, like, I had tried to do this in my head, and I kind of came up with the same conclusion as like Rob Butler's earlier call. What the exact phrasing, and I'm going to get into spoiler territory here, prior to the New Donk City Festival, of anything that seems to imply that New Donk City is the site of the original arcade game, this is the most overt. It's supposed to be a celebration of the city's beginnings, and said celebration includes a recreation, sort of 25M. And again, this is an example of Nintendo leaving wiggle room in this. Recounting the story of the city's beginnings doesn't mean well, I guess it does mean this is the city's beginnings, but
city's beginnings is ambiguous. It could mean because Pauline was kidnapped by Donkey Kong back in, the 80s or whatever, then that is what spurred her to found New Donk City.
Right.
Because as seen in Donkey Kong 94, that city was already pretty damn established. It's not like that city was just beginning. If they're implying that reason there were girders...
What if they built all the buildings and then they just decided to sit on them for a while until they had an elaborate... No, this is stupid. An elaborate
what is this, Arrested Development? They ran out of money, and so it was just like it was a model home or something?
That would explain why nobody seems to live in Big Ape City. It's just all model apartments. They're hollow inside.
Well, it's also an original Game Boy game. So they...
But, yeah,
we do have the notion of Commuter Kong or City Kong or Hat Kong, whatever you want to call them. So...
But my initial attempt to reconciliation was maybe what we know is like the construction site, which it's a construction site, was a development project started offshore of DK Island on the island we see in Donkey Konga 2, the island that they go to in Donkey Kong Land, and it was this construction project started without the consent of the Kongs, and as Rob Butler said, Cranky didn't take too kindly with that. Picks a fight with the on-site carpenter, runs off with his girlfriend, destroys substantial portions of the construction site in the process. I mean, we see this in the intro to DK Arcade. Donkey Kong jumps up and down on the girders in 25M and staggers them. And then Mario himself unsecures a bunch of girders so that Donkey Kong falls flat on his head. And I'm just thinking, maybe in the aftermath of that and everything that followed in Donkey Kong Jr., they sort of realized the folly of this project is not worth this. And, maybe the Kongs and the people managing this project, bury the hatchet. They decide to relocate the city somewhere else. The Kongs help them do it. They bury the hatchet, and the Kongs get the territory that was going to be this construction project. It becomes Big Ape City, but they help the human developers build a new city in the Metro Kingdom, and all of the tributes we see around that city are just in relationship to that history.
That's plausible, and it's possible. I'm not going to really marry myself to any extensive backstory like that so far. I'll have to ruminate on it quite a bit. I think part of the reason why I'm hesitant to is because that would erase the theory of a cruise ship coming to DK Island, and that's very much tied into my Goldilocks and Little Bear fanon. And really, I mean, what's more important, Super Mario Odyssey or Goldilocks and Little Bear? Priorities, people. Cameron, that's a good point, though. So this would explain all the street names, okay? The misspelled Rattly sign, and especially the K. Rool sign. Because, okay, so if this was like the city where, the arcade game took place and there was actually some sort of Kong connection to it, having a K. Rool street sign, the guy who tried to blow up Donkey Kong Island, that's the Kong equivalent of Osama bin Laden Highway. And I can make that joke without offending anyone because he was an Animal Crossing fan. So it's relevant to Nintendo. Now, if Pauline wants to reference K. Rool in a city designed to celebrate the DK Isles in all of their glory and in all of their shame, then who cares? Not the new Donkers. They're all humans on the Mushroom Earth.
Can I give my
cultural appropriation?
Can I give my working theory as to why there's a K. Rool street in New Donk City?
Sure, go for it.
I think after Crocodile Isle got destroyed, there were a bunch of Kremlings that had to live somewhere, and they moved to the Metro Kingdom and set up along one city street.
It's little Crocodile Isle.
And the Kongs can't really argue to get it changed because every time they go down to City Hall and fight, they just hear the argument. Yeah, well, who in their what couple blew up that island again?
About our heritage.
Now, I will wrap up my theory by stating that it being a tribute, New Donk City being a tribute to Big Ape City and Donkey Kong Island would also be a pretty clean explanation of the name. New Donk City. New Donk City. You know, we forget, being Americans, we forget, because so many of our states and cities begin with the preface new, but they were always named after an original location, usually in Europe. You know,
you mean there's an old Mexico, Hyle?
There is an old York. This being kind of like Pauline being a settler in the New World being the Mushroom World, that would explain New Donk City. Which actually makes a lot of sense when you really stop and consider it. And we have another theory. He didn't call in, but this is from Twitter, and I just want to get this in real quick. This is from DK Vine forum member and number one ukulele fan in the world, the master of the Nintendo DS. He says on DK Vine's Twitter, you guys are going to have to help me here because you guys know a lot more about Mario canon than I do. Good news, I have figured out how Big Ape City, In on Earth, and New Donk City, there's some typos here, but I'm trying to keep true to the spirit. Okay. Good news, I figured out how Big Ape City, In on Earth, and New Donk City is on Mushroom Earth. In Galaxy, capitalized referring to Super Mario Galaxy, in Galaxy, Mushroom Universe reset. So, while in the original universe, the events of DK Arcade happened on DK Island, in Universe 2, they happened in the Metro Kingdom. What?
So... yeah, I can maybe weigh in a little bit on this. It's been a while since I played Galaxy, but the ending of Super Mario Galaxy has this sort of ambiguous ending where the universe kind of starts to cave in on itself, and the Lumas that Mario spent the entire game rescuing sort of save the day by recreating the galaxy.
Jesus Christ. That's like the infamous mid-90s DC Comics event 0 Hour. Read that in Bizarro World. What?
The innocent reading of that is that, you know, they save the day, everything's fine, everything's good, everything's put back in the same place it was. And the other reading that you see a lot online is Mario's universe got destroyed and the Lumas reset it and put a new one in on its place. So that's where I believe he's coming from with this is an sort of an altered universe.
Yeah, although I don't know how much Mario's universe being reset would influence Donkey Kong's world if we are saying that they're two separate universes. Two separate dimensions at the very least. I think that would be kind of a nightmare scenario if every world in the multiverse could then influence the other worlds in the multiverse through some sort of cosmic calamity.
It would also be kind of weird if, and I realize, yes, fiction does this all the time, but it would be kind of weird if, you know, you create this alternate universe partway through Mario Galaxy, and the only significant difference is that DK Arcade happened in a different place.
Well, that was from season 14 of Sliders, where they were running out of ideas.
Existing only in David's fan fiction.
I would think, if anything, it just reset the events of Super Mario Galaxy itself. Everything before would have been exactly the same. Like, I don't know, just one Luma have like a really weird fixation with DK Arcade and really, really want to slot that in there.
At least it's better than Flashpoint. Mario could have just been wearing a high collar and started dating Samus. Why am I making all these Superman references this episode? I don't know. So that's where I'm standing with New Donk City. I think, Cameron, it sounds like you're in a similar position. Even if we don't like see all the details eye to eye, we at least feel
you can see
enough.
what you want in New Donk City. I think they've left it open-ended enough that nobody is definitively wrong. And I think even I pop over to Mario Wiki, and so far they're kind of saying the same thing. Like, down in the trivia pages for New Donk and Big Ape City, they just say this was proposed as the origin site for DK Arcade. Another one that is the link to the other.
Yeah, and that's what that's kind of good, considering how split the fan bases are for Mario and Donkey Kong. It kind of allows us each to have our own personal stake in our own continuities and canons without necessarily making the other one invalid, right? So everybody kind of wins, and nobody gets their treasured lore overwritten, even though this is new lore in the term of Mario. But I know people were attached to New Donk City the second it showed up in that reveal trailer. David, do you have any thoughts on this before we move on to the other point?
Well, if the whole Mushroom universe was destroyed, that wouldn't really affect anything on the Donkey Kong Earth, the real Earth, the only Earth that matters. So,
Cranky Kong probably would have gotten a boner.
Well, I guess if it altered the Mario verse, so there was so that Donkey Kong happened in it, but didn't alter Donkey Kong's universe, that would mean there were two Donkey Kongs running around.
I need a migraine pill. All right. Well, the other big issue that stems from Super Mario Odyssey is a bit more smaller scale. So we've averted the crisis that is, will this harm our canon and fanon? No, it does not. So the other issue is, do we have to cover Super Mario Odyssey? Does Donkey Kong or Cranky Kong make an actual appearance in the game? So I want to read. We heard some opinions from callers on this topic. I want to read what Josh Wallen from Off of the Geek Critique wrote on the DK Vine forum, and this is something he also shared with us in the inner circle as well. So I quote: "Here's what I've got. The only time (parentheses) at least so far, that I've seen any kind of character appearance of Donkey Kong is in this big festival in New Donk City. But you only ever see him in the side-scrolling 8-bit sections as a sprite from the original Donkey Kong. Typically, it'd be easy to say that's just arcade Donkey Kong, and I think that's what we've been assuming till now. However, ellipses, entities in the 8-bit environment also exist in 3D space. There are places where, for instance, bullet bills get fired out of an 8-bit cannon, move through the edge of a wall, and become 3D bullet bills. The Donkey Kong in the festival isn't a static decoration. He throws barrels, reacts to being attacked, makes noise, moves around, and he could be taken a couple of ways. A, it's not a real character. It's some kind of 8-bit animatronic made for the festival. B, it's a time-displaced Cranky Kong from 1981 who is participating in the festival for unclear reasons. Just a time, baby! C, it's our modern Donkey Kong participating in the festival by playing the role of his father. Given what we know, I believe that option C is the most reasonable explanation. Now, of course, the modern character doesn't look like that, but there's precedent for him appearing that way when scaled down to 8-bit. And he provided a link to YouTube, which showed the Super Smash Bros. For Wii U / Nintendo 3DS Duck Hunt reveal video, which I believe depicted Donkey Kong in his 8-bit form. I think it was the Duck Hunt reveal video, right?
Yeah, it had a bunch of like NES era characters appearing in their 8-bit form and then transforming into their Super Smash Brothers models. And Donkey Kong was among them, and yeah, people pointed out, that doesn't make sense because that's cranky, but it's a cute little video. You accept the abridged history of Donkey Kong in there. It's not the same Link either, so can't remember if he was in that video or not, but you get my point. They would have done it with Link.
Although, there is the possibility that Link has the same soul and gets reincarnated, although that's kind of shit upon, I think, in one game where Link meets another Link. Whatever. But the point standing, yeah, I understand what he's saying. And that's something I hadn't considered because I was in the, I guess, boat. I'm using a lot of submarine and boat analogies this episode. I guess talking about islands and globes and whatnot is just getting the inner mariner in me all jazzed up. I believed that this was either a Cranky Kong /Donkey Kong Sr. animatronic or some sort of hard light hologram because I'm a ridiculous human being. And I hadn't considered the whole thing, the whole notion about the game where you go into these 2D spaces and become the classic Mario sprite with the classic enemies that also exist in a 3D space. What do you guys have to say about this? Because I'm kind of taking a back seat on this for now. I want to hear more opinions.
Well, you know what I said about this game being nice in that it gives you a lot of leeway to believe what you want to believe. This is one of those cases where the pendulum swings the other way, and it's kind of annoying that it lets you make up your mind because we need a definitive answer on this one to figure it out for DK Vine.
Well, you know why they did this, though. And that's because Miyamoto himself is personally opposed to putting Donkey Kong in a Mario game. They tried to do it in, I think, Galaxy 2, I want to say, and it was shot down. And he doesn't want to mix the worlds too much, which is weird to say considering Nintendo does it all the time. But I think there is this line that he believes exists where you can't have Donkey Kong in a mainline Mario platformer, or you can't have Mario in a mainline Donkey Kong Country game.
You can have him in a mainline Yoshi game for some reason.
Yeah, but it's a bridge too far for Miyamoto's sake, and I think this was their workaround because it's ambiguous enough that it's not Rare's Donkey Kong. It's not the modern Donkey Kong. It's a sprite of Donkey Kong. So it's a reference, and it's kind of left decidedly up in the air, and nothing really gets spelled out too much. And I think that's the only way they could get Donkey Kong in the game, which is kind of funny because it's what we talked about, I believe, during E3. There's this theory that what if it's just a Donkey Kong sprite? If we didn't talk about it at E3, we definitely talked about it afterwards. And
right. And I think that was kicked off by, like, there was in gameplay footage and in, I think, like a trailer or something, there was footage of that segment immediately before you see DK of Mario climbing the 25M replica.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, there was a live stream where they got to play the game, and of course, the press talking with them asked, is Donkey Kong going to be in here? And there was a non-answer, and that's kind of what we still have here is a non-answer.
What if it's Cranky Kong, and then when you defeat him at the end, that's how he dies?
And he's reunited with Wrinkly Kong. That's like DLC tacked on ending. His spirit reunites with Wrinkly in the afterlife. Well, yeah, they were being very dodgy about whether DK would appear in New Donk City, and I think we came to the realization we know what Donkey Kong looks like. It's not going to be surprising if he's in New Donk City with all these references. So there's got to be something more to it. And it's either going to be something gimmicky like a Donkey Kong sprite, or, you know, one of the really extreme outside ideas was, what if it's Cranky Kong controlling a Donkey Kong sprite like mech suit, which I'm kind of disappointed they didn't do. Part of me is disappointed they didn't
Can we
do.
split the difference and say it's like a DK animatronic controlled off screen by Cranky?
Oh my god.
Just pile on the.
Wait, it's an animatronic controlled by a hologram.
But you know, he's way back in the Donkey Kong dimension, so you know it's still not DK.
Yeah. Well, look, I understand what Josh is saying and what our caller was saying. Like it's one of those things where we have made a game, Donkey Kong Universe, for arguably less. Game & Watch Gallery 4 has Donkey Kong, our Donkey Kong, on the title screen, but he doesn't actually appear during gameplay. But that's enough.
It's arguably an art mistake because the rest of the game has arcade DK.
Well,
but we still count it because art is kind of the deciding factor. I think the general rule is, regardless of whether or not we know the intention is that this is arcade DK, if the layman is going to look at Donkey Kong's appearance and think it's the same Donkey Kong, we judge it to be the same Donkey Kong.
For Game & Watch, I don't want to get too much into Game & Watch Gallery 4 because that's going to be an epic spotlight episode one day. But I feel like what happened there was the game was in development, and then the Rare buyout occurred, and they standardized everything Donkey Kong to be Rare's Donkey Kong. But during the actual gameplay, they still had the Donkey Kong 94 Donkey Kong. And so it was kind of a split difference thing on the titles.
Yeah, the artwork for that game, I think, is the last time we ever see DK94 Donkey Kong. The 2D assets.
And Donkey Kong Jr. as well. Like they were phasing those guys out for Rare's Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. And so that was kind of caught right in the middle of that. So I think that's really the explanation. But we made it DKU. The Mini Mario Amiibo and Friend, whatever the fuck it's called. It's got a ghastly name. But we made that DKU by saying that the Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong Amiibos interacting with the game is Donkey and Diddy setting off their mini versions by using Mario Party E precedent. Mario Party E is another weird one where Donkey Kong doesn't appear in any electronic portions, but he's got a physical card, and because the game has the physical props interacting with the electronic games, that's enough to make a DKU. So, yeah, we've gone out on a limb before for far less than this. It might be we don't know if it's Cranky or modern Donkey Kong, but I totally get their point, guys. I'm starting to wonder if this is DKU now or not, and I honestly don't have an answer for this episode. I wish I did, but
I don't either, and I know that's going to frustrate everybody listening to this episode because we could have just made it 2 seconds of yes or no.
Yeah.
Great. I guess we just wasted an hour.
No, look, the new Donk City stuff, I feel like we squared away pretty nicely. But unfortunately, our callers and Josh from Off of the Geek Critique kind of changed my mind, because I went into this thinking it's not DKU, we are safe, I'm singing this jingle for no reason, and then bam, they changed my mind because they were persuasive and I'm open-minded, damn it, despite what people say.
So
I know you're not, David, but that's why I love you.
So I get to say no?
No, you don't get to say no. We have to take it to the DKU tribunal, obviously.
Very well.
So we've talked a bit about like how DK's physical appearance kind of decides everything, and we're open-minded to viewer input, and I've been trying to figure out an organic way to work this in, but I Am Gibbon's been blowing up our Twitch chat with this question.
Okay.
Pauline speaks as if her days of getting kidnapped by the big ape are long in the past, and intimates she hasn't seen Mario in some time. Given this, will you lot finally acknowledge I was right about the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series being set very early days for Mario, and thus being set before DKC, whether it stars a grown-up junior shortly prior to DKC or featuring Cranky in his younger days?
Well, Pauline doesn't say how long it's been since she's seen Mario. It could have just... When was the last Mario vs. Donkey Kong game I am given that Pauline appeared in?
That was the
Answer me that.
DSi one, I think.
I mean, she could be like a Sonic character where they say long time no see all the damn time, even if they like just saw each other a week ago.
Or Lanky's good friend, the tomato.
Yeah. I am given look towards the tomato.
I see the merit in that interpretation of Mario vs. Donkey Kong, but I think as far as covering it on DK Vine, our hands are tied by the fact that it looks like DKC Donkey Kong, and we're kind of stuck with that.
Yeah, I kind of have a rule where it's, and I know this is going to be weird again coming from me who ties continuity into logic knots when I need to, but the simplest explanation is usually the easiest. So, look, I respect your fanon, dkgirder.com, check it out, but DK Vine, I feel like we have to like just acknowledge that it's the modern Donkey Kong. Now, whether or not this is Cranky Kong in New Donk City or our Donkey Kong, I don't know. And I've been waiting for Cranky Kong and Mario to face off again, and like ever since Mario Kart 64 brought Rare's Donkey Kong concepts into Mario a little bit. And the closest we've gotten to it happening is Super Smash Bros. Melee, where Cranky is kind of watching the fights unfold from his lab. You just see a silhouette.
Though I guess that Given does point out we're kind of contradicting ourselves because we're essentially saying art style doesn't matter for New Donk City, but it does matter for Mario vs. Donkey Kong.
Well, okay, but the only reason it might not matter here is because of the 2D sprite. Whatever the effect is when they go into the 2D mode, it changes the character's appearance.
The in-universe conceit of what we're seeing.
And because Cranky was never an old man sprite, you know, he kind of looks like his young... I mean, that could be an explanation. Again, I do not know. I do not have all of the answers.
That
right
would
now,
have actually been like a really cool twist in the game, honestly. Having classic arcade DK show up, and then after you defeat him, he leaves the 2D area and becomes the much thinner, more fragile Cranky Kong. Just the reveal that you've beat up on an old man.
Yeah. I kind of hate, again, that because I've been waiting for this epic Cranky and Mario encounter, and I kind of hate that this possibly might be it, but we don't know. It feels kind of underwhelming. It kind of feels like the wind has been taken out of the sails again.
I feel like that's something that's going to be a running theme to this episode. Like, we're hemming and hawing whether or not the game is DKU. I wanted this game to be DKU. Because as frustrating it is to kind of get the non-answer as to whether Donkey Kong's in it, New Donk City is great.
I kind of had sort of gotten my resistance beaten out of me around E3 time. I was just like, okay, it's going to be DKU, whatever. And then finding out that it was just a Donkey Kong sprite, I was like, oh, it's not. That's a surprise. Okay, I guess that's a relief. And now that I don't know again, I don't know how to feel. Like, I'm just like, we don't have an answer, guys, so we'll just have to see to be continued.
Wait, Han, but if that was our Donkey Kong, wouldn't he have pointed out that Rattley is spelled wrong?
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.